2. The Bloodline. Morning returns to the sanctuary of 647. It arrives not as a thief, but as a familiar guest, heralded by the scent of roasted coffee rolling through the corridor like a golden mist. It carries within it the ancient murmur of boiling water, the percussive sound of wood being split by a practiced hand, and the low, ghostly hum of a radio drifting in from a neighbor's yard, the static of the world filtered through the peace of the compound. This was Iyaya's hour. She moved through the house with the focused grace of a conductor leading an orchestra of the morning, one hand lifting a lid to release the steam of the earth, the other brushing stray ash from the metad with the reverence of a priestess. The first light of the sun struck her cheek, transfiguring the sweat of her labor into beads of gold. Her rhythm was the rhythm of a precise and holy clock. Grind, stir, taste, call out for the salt of life, and laugh at the impatience of her own spirit.
Addis is waking, and so must you, Lijochi,
said she, her spoon tapping against the pot like a bell calling the faithful to the altar of the day. Nahom sat cross-legged near the door, a small scribe tracing patterns in the dust of his ancestors. The air was a thick shroud of spice, smoke, and history that refused to stay buried. In this house, the walls did not merely stand, they breathed. From the next room came Wasin's voice, a sound that was half prayer and half chronicle.
Your grandfather was a man of exact lines,
she said, her words finding every corner of the house like incense smoke.
He measured even the wind. When he built for forever.
Iyaya smiled, her eyes meeting the boys through the steam.
She tells that story every morning,
she whispered, a conspiratorial light in her eyes.
But forever needs tending, does it not? Even eternity requires a hand to sweep its hearth.
On a shelf above the hearth lay the talismans of the first son wrapped in old, sanctified cloth. A carpenter's square, a small chisel, a tape measure stained with the pigments of 1,000 finished dreams. They belonged to Wend Wasson, he who knew the secret language of cedar and pine. Whenever the house groaned in the wind, Iyaya would look to the rafters and say, "That's Wendiye checking the joints," as if the architect was still ensuring the house held its integrity against the turning of the world. Beyond the courtyard, the neighborhood echoed with the hammer's blow. Somewhere a door was being fixed, somewhere else a window mended. Here, craft was the only dialect that did not deceive. Wasin shuffled in, wrapped in a shawl the color of ash, her face a map of the century. She looked at the tools and nodded with the gravity of a queen.
Wendiye built beauty, even when nobody asked for it,
she said, her voice carrying a rhythm older than the city.
He said a house should stand proud, even if the world forgets who made it.
Nahom listened, his eyes wide as the old woman's voice conjured the ghosts of the bloodline. She spoke of Tewodros, who had chased the stars and gone to the desert to teach children the secrets of light, of Rediet, who made a home from the bricks of patience and the leaves of books, of Eskendir Chombe, the handyman of Kazanchis who could coax life from any broken thing. Their names rose like a chant of the elders: Wend Wasson, Tewodros, Rediet, Eskendir, Teshagar. Each name was followed by a silence, a small, somber bow of remembrance. Iyaya wiped her hands and poured the dark coffee.
When I grind the beans,
She said,
I hear them, all of them. Wendie's hammer, Tedisho's chalk, Chombe's laugh, Teshe's prayer. Even their ghosts keep time for us.
Nahom sipped and felt the warmth travel through him, not merely as a drink, but as inheritance made liquid. On the far wall hung a framed parchment, brittle and brown. A family tree drawn by his father's hand, names curling like branches, roots reaching back to the ancient Aksumite throne. The ink had faded under the gaze of time, but the shape remained. Lines crossing centuries, touching kings, priests, and builders.
Your father's people.
Said Wasin softly, following his gaze.
From the highlands where the stone speaks and time itself kneels. You carry their quiet pride.
Iyaya laughed, her voice a sudden brightness.
He carries all of us. He will need the shoulders of Atlas.
Outside, the wind shifted, bringing the smell and cool breath of old trees mingled with the incense from the royal churches of Addis. The house seemed to listen, as if the wood and the stone were part of the conversation. Wasin raised her cup.
To the blood that built, the blood that dreamed, the blood that endures.
Iyaya added, her voice a benediction.
And to those still learning what it means to belong to such a house.
Nahom lifted his own cup, mimicking the priestesses of his life. To the blood, he said, his voice small but certain.
I was born in Kazanchis, where the blood of the builder is the spirit of the stone. I was born in the house where the hammer and the prayer are the same song. I was born where the names of the dead are the pillars of the living, and the steam of the coffee is the breath of the ancestors. I was born in the lineage of the eternal.
Wasin set her cup down carefully. The sound of the porcelain touching the tray was tiny but final, as if she were closing one volume of a story before opening another.
And then,
She said, looking toward the blue hills beyond the window.
there is the other river.
Nahom tilted his head. The other river?
Yes,
She said.
the one that began before Kazanchis had a name. The one that came from your grandfather's mountains.
The room seemed to quiet itself for her words. Even Iyaya stopped stirring the pot. In that silence, Wasin's voice softened into the tone of a prophet.
Your father's people came from the north, from the land where the obelisks touch the sky. Aksum. They say the first light that ever entered Ethiopia struck the gold of their crowns and scattered like sparks across the world. One of those sparks found its way here, to this city, and it carried his blood. And it found home in us. Your father first fell madly in love with my daughter. Then he stood up straight in it, and he stood strong. He was an unstoppable force that met his match in the immovable heart of your mother. See, we did not just name her Ainet, truth, for no random reason.
She paused, her mind adrift in the tides of 1966 EC, the year the emperor's memoirs were published, and the world began to shake.
She came through me on Yekatit 12, 1966, and I felt what she was. And raising her, we all saw it. I will not begin about my ancestry now, son. but would only remind you that the colonel that made her with me also came from a long line of nobles of Shiwa, the last known land of the House of David. The beautiful meadows and hills that remain proud and free, now and forevermore. From people known for diversity and cunning, and revered for their divine hospitality. From the last empire that built us this country. You, my child, like Abai, the Nile, are not just a really long river, but the river of Ethiopia, fed with all her holy waters. If Aksum is your crown, Shiwa Addis Ababa is your throne.
Nahom had heard the tales before, but never like this. In her telling, it felt less like genealogy and more like weather, something alive that moved through the generations.
Your father's line was of builders,
She went on.
They built more in stone than wood, churches carved into the earth, walls so smooth they seemed poured from the hand of God. They carried chisels and swords, and their greatest battles were with silence and time. Their victory is you, here, now, and in the days to come. Life is a circle, dear, and time rotates us all around it.
Iyaya smiled.
He got both sides then, the patience from here and the fire from there.
Exactly.
Wassine said.
From his father's side, he learned how to endure. From his mother's, how to rise. That's how your father could walk between worlds, the soldier's house and the scholar's court, the old empire and the new republic.
Nahom listened, the pictures blooming behind his eyes. He saw his father younger, standing on the highlands, the wind tugging at his clothes, the shadow of an obelisk stretching across his feet. Then another image, the same man descending the road to Addis, carrying books instead of weapons, his eyes fixed on something that only he could see. Iyaya placed a bowl of lentils in front of him.
Eat, lineage. A story this big needs food to hold it.
He ate slowly, trying to taste the distance between those two rivers, the salt of the north and the spice of the city. Somewhere between them, he found his own pulse. Wassine reached for the parchment again and smoothed its edges.
Remember, Nahom,
She said.
we don't inherit only blood. We inherit unfinished work. Every life in this house is a brick in something larger.
And what am I? He asked. She looked at him as if weighing his years against her memories.
You are the bridge,
She said.
the place where the rivers meet.
Wasn't I the river?
You are the bridge too, young one. And you are excused. I don't want to take your whole day.
She always ceased to speak whenever listeners were less passionate.
I was born in Kazanchis, at the crossroads of the crown and the throne. I was born where the stone of Aksum meets the soil of Shiwa, in the blood of the soldier and the scholar. I was born to be the bridge where the ancient river finds its new path. I was born in the intersection of the ages.
Outside, the wind shifted once more, bringing with it the sound of distant bells. The two women fell quiet, listening. In that moment, Nahom felt both lines within him, one flowing through his mother's laughter, the other through his father's silence. And he understood that they were not separate things at all. Together, they made the rhythm of his own heart. He stepped out of 647, and the air met him warm and bright. Morning had ripened into noon. the smell of frying onions and petrol blended in the street. Children were kicking a ball stitched from old socks. A shoeshine boy called to him, waving a brush like a flag. The world was ordinary again, and yet not ordinary at all. Every sound now seemed to carry a note from those two rivers. The clang of a blacksmith's hammer was Wendier's heartbeat. The hum of power lines overhead felt like the song of the highlands where his father's people had carved churches. Even the laughter spilling out of bars sounded like the mingling of water on rock. He walked slowly, touching the walls as he passed. The heat of the sun against the corrugated iron was sharp. The metal vibrated faintly, alive. Each sheet, each nail had been placed there by a hand that belonged to someone who had loved this place. An old man sweeping the front of a cafe looked up.
"Ah, Wosine's grandson," he said. "You walk like your grandfather. Same shoulders."
Nahum smiled, unsure what to say. Compliments about blood always felt both gift and burden. He turned down the narrow alley that Chombe had once built, Kechenua Menged. The stone walls and iron fences leaned close, whispering the secrets of paint and laughter, of arguments patched and mended. A child's drawing of a bird was still visible on one of them, sun-faded but stubborn. He ran his fingers over it, feeling the dust and remembering his own small hand tracing similar lines years ago. Halfway down the lane, he stopped. The wind from the east carried a faint scent of myrrh from the church and the sharper tang of diesel from the main road. He closed his eyes. Two scents, opposite, meeting in his lungs. Two histories breathing the same air. He whispered, not sure to whom,
I am both the builder and the stone. I am the hand and the hammer, the river and the bridge.
When he opened his eyes again, the world had not changed, but he had. The street stretched ahead like a riverbed waiting for rain. He followed it back toward the Sunday market, his steps steady, the rhythm of the city beating in time with the rhythm inside him. Evening began with smoke. It drifted up from the stoves of 100 houses, turning the air bronze. From the alley, the hum of day softened into conversation, the metallic pulse of hammers giving way to clinking cups. Kazanchi's always changed her skin at sunset. The rough edges of workday life blurred into warmth. When Nahum returned to the compound, the gate stood open as it always did. Inside, the courtyard glowed orange from the fire where Eyaya crouched, frying meat in an iron pan. Chunks sizzled, popped, and sang. She moved them with a quick wrist so that none would burn. The sweet scent of rendered fat and spiced-up meat spread fast, irresistible, smoky, familiar.
"Wash your hands,"
she said without looking up.
"We'll eat soon."
He obeyed, scooping water from the clay pot near the door, the coolness biting pleasantly at his palms. Homage to the culture. Kazanchis was blessed with the first tap waters in Addis when Menelik made her the sweetest water that always runs, the lifeblood of the district. From the living room came voices, Wosin's, calm and measured, and Radet's, visiting from his house next door in the same compound. They were talking in half-whispers about repairs to the roof and about how the city seemed to change too fast to catch its breath. Nahum lingered at the edge of the room, pretending to tie his shoe so he could listen to the elders.
It used to be the same wind from the hills,
Radiet was saying.
Now it smells of tar and money.
Wosin stirred her tea.
"Every empire begins with builders and ends with landlords,"
she said quietly, a truth that felt like a sentence of death. Eyaya clapped her hands.
"Enough of that talk before supper,"
she said.
Let us have peace while we still can.
Dinner was simple, yet it felt like a feast of the spirit. The radio murmured from the corner, a tune of Astor still soft after decades. Wosine sat straight-backed, her shawl folded neatly around her shoulders. Eyaya served, making sure everyone's plate was full before touching her own. As they ate, stories wove themselves through the meal. Wendie's laughter in Jigjiga, Tadisho's letters from the desert, Chombe fixing a neighbor's door for the 10th time and refusing payment, Teshe's adventures across country, Maseksa's children coming from Harar with eyes too old for their years. Each name opened a window. Each memory was a small flare of light in the growing dark. Nahom listened, chewing slowly, swallowing every inflection. To him, these were not tales. They were the coordinates of his being. After the meal, Eyaya poured the second round of coffee and lowered the wick of the kerosene lamp. Tribute to the old times. Kazanchis was the first beneficiary of electricity when Emperor Menelik II had his Swiss engineer Alfred Ilg introduce electrical power to the imperial palace in 1905. Shadows lengthened on the walls. The portraits seemed to lean closer, as if listening too. Wosine's gaze drifted to the photograph of her husband in uniform.
He used to say,
She murmured.
every house is a small kingdom, guarded well. And look at us. We still guard this one.
Not for long,
Said Radiat, almost to himself.
They're measuring again. The men from the city office came today. Said they're planning new roads.
The silence that followed was heavy, a physical weight in the room. Even the radio seemed to understand and quiet itself. Eyaya broke it first.
Then let them build their roads.
She said.
We will still have our stories. Roads never last as long as memory.
She smiled, but Nahom saw the tension in her hands. He wondered for the first time if the house could really keep them safe forever. Later that night, when everyone had gone to bed, he climbed the trees to the roof as he often did. The tin was still warm under his feet. He lay on his back and watched the stars blink into life over Addis. Somewhere beyond those stars were the highlands of Aksum. Below them, the restless heart of Kazanchis. Between the two, he breathed. The voices from the house below drifted up in fragments, laughter, a snatch of a hymn, the scrape of a chair. He closed his eyes and listened until the sounds melted into one long, steady rhythm. It was the sound of blood moving through walls, through stone, through time. And in that rhythm, he heard what his grandmother had meant. He was the bridge.
I was born in Kazanchis, where the road of the landlord meets the memory of the builder. I was born where the stars of Aksum watch over the tin roofs of the city. I was born to be the bridge that the new road cannot destroy. I was born in the rhythm of the enduring blood.
647 held not just one family. It held the genealogy of a nation. Every corridor whispered names that reached backward through wars, migrations, and crowned eras. Wosine, the matriarch, came from the high hills of St. Michael, Addis Ababa, from fathers that came from Gojam, a land of blue rivers and fierce devotion. From Asagurt in northern Shiwa, where mountains surrounded them with grace. From Guragi in the south, the fertile land known for hard work and hard play. From Oromo lineages sacred to their people. She herself was an embodiment of Addis, a queen of diversity. Her husband, the colonel, had been born in Shenkora, Minjar, ever-proud Shiwa. They had had Ewunet, Nahom's mother, in Harar. His father was born in Tigray, in the foothills of ancient Aksum, where the stele still pierced the sky. He used to say that every Ethiopian carried two inheritances, one written in blood, the other in duty. Some nights, when the kerosene stove hissed in the kitchen and the children gathered close to the colonel in the smaller salon, where he watched news on the small, old, red, black and white TV the entire neighborhood used to surround and watch, he would unroll the maps of his memory. He traced with his finger the route of his service: Bonga, Jigjiga, Harar, Asmara, each name a story of fire and ice. He spoke of the long retreat from Eritrea after the coup of 1974, when Emperor Haile Selassie was overthrown, of the soldiers who refused to raise arms against their countrymen during the early years of the Derg's regime, of the friends buried without crosses because the ground itself had become a battlefield. "We fought believing Ethiopia was one body," he would say, his eyes reflecting the flickering light of the screen. "Now she is wounded, but she still breathes." Eyaya listened while stirring the lentils. Tadisho scribbled formulas on the margins of the newspaper. Wendie carved small models of door frames from leftover wood, dreaming of houses that could never fall. The children learned history not from textbooks, but from the tremor in their father's voice. Down the generations, the stories intertwined like vines. There was Rediat, whose hands bore the calluses of both scholar and laborer. Eskandir Chombe, the neighborhood's beloved repairman, who built the narrow alley Kechinua Menged so that people could pass safely during the rainy season. Nunu Frehiwat, whose laughter could silence quarrels. Uwunet, who carried the quiet strength of her line like a hidden crown. Senedu, who traded sugar and secrets at the Sunday market. Betty, the youngest, with the fire of all her siblings in her eyes. Araya, who was saintly humble. Salam, who labored to save lives. Ashinafi, the unconquerable, and Tashagar, who was art. Their father, the colonel, had 12 children and saw in them the continuation of Ethiopia's mosaic, a living reflection of what the emperor once called unity through diversity. Each child spoke a slightly different dialect, cooked a slightly different spice, prayed in a slightly different rhythm. And yet when they gathered for lunch, the table held only one heart. When Nahom was small, he learned that his father's side traced its root to an ancient Aksumite line, warriors and scribes who had once guarded the northern kingdom's gold routes. The colonel had laughed when the boy asked if that meant he was royal. "Royalty," he said, "is not a title. It is endurance. If your people survive with dignity, you are already a king." On holidays, the family traveled north to visit the ancestral church at Mekelle. The journey itself was a pilgrimage through Ethiopia's layered past. The ruins of Italian forts from the 1936 to 41 occupation, the eucalyptus plantations planted under Menelik II, the dusty fields where villagers still sang the same hymns sung before the coming of firearms. Wosin would sprinkle water on the ground when they crossed the borders of old provinces, whispering blessings for the dead and the unborn alike. Back in Kazanchis, the city moved to a faster rhythm. New ministries rose where gardens had been. The Economic Commission for Africa, ECA, building expanded, relocating the first relocated Kazanchisians after the fascists' purges and segregation. Traders from Eritrea, Somalia, and Yemen filled the markets with foreign scents. Through it all, House 647 remained an anchor. People said the colonel's compound was immune to time. It wasn't, but it endured long enough for Nahom to learn what belonging felt like. Once, when the evening light slanted across the apple trees, an old man called Nahom close and placed a heavy, warm hand on his shoulder. "One day," whispered he, "they will measure this land with money. Remember that your worth is measured in memory." Nahom did remember. He carried it like a secret inheritance, one not recorded in any registry, yet older than the Republic itself.
I was born in Kazanchus, the kingdom of the 12 children and the 12 histories. I was born where royalty is found in the dirt of endurance. I was born in the house that the measuring tape of the merchant cannot define. I was born in Kazanchus, and my worth is the memory of the king.